You are now listening to a podcast made in collaboration with the Copenhagen College Radio.
Welcome back to the 12th episode of the Social Media and Politics Podcast, bringing you expert insights into how social media is changing the political game. I'm your host, Michael Becerra, PhD student in political science at the University of Copenhagen. If you're just stumbling on this podcast, make sure you hit subscribe so that you're kept up to date with all the latest episodes. And if you're a seasoned veteran of the show, keep telling your friends, keep telling your colleagues, share us around on your social media accounts. You can tweet us at SMNP Podcast or check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/Social Media and Politics Podcast. Throughout this podcast series, we've been hearing various experts and digital strategists say that images and video are key media to communicate a message amid the massive amount of content generated on social networking platforms. Now, what's interesting is each platform has its own set of algorithms that govern which content is prioritized and shown to users, and ultimately, these algorithms are at the core of a social network's business model. More engagement, more time spent on the site, this translates into more coin in the coffers from digital advertising revenue. And YouTube, particularly, is big business. Owned by tech giant Google, YouTube's estimated value stands currently at approximately $80 billion US. To put that into context, YouTube would sit firmly among the top 100 companies in the S&P 500 index. That's because every day, about 5 billion videos are watched on YouTube, and 80% of those come from outside the United States. With such a high amount of traffic, it's inevitable that YouTube would become a source of news. According to Pew Research Center, about half of U.S. adults use YouTube, and of those, about 1/5 report getting news from the site. Particularly in the last U.S. election, users around the world turned to YouTube to watch live streams of the Clinton-Trump debates, as well as follow the election coverage from media clips and user-uploaded commentaries. While YouTube users can search for political videos on the site, they are not exactly in as much control of their browsing than they might think. A complex set of algorithms govern what content is presented to users, and a host of data metrics are logged each time a user visits the site. This data feeds back into the algorithm and impacts the content presented to users, which may have some serious implications for how citizens form their political opinions. So I'm interested in how these back-end inner workings of YouTube might have an impact on politics, particularly during times of heavy campaigning, like elections. So I've invited Matthew Gielen to come on the show and share his insights about YouTube's algorithm. Matt is the founder of Little Monster Media Co., a company geared towards helping major commercial brands build and engage audiences using online video through social networks, particularly Facebook and YouTube. Previously, Matt worked for the Frederator Network, directing their audience development and programming strategies for some big-time YouTube channels like Cartoon Hangover and Channel Frederator, growing them to over 1 million subscribers. Using data from these channels, Matt's done some really interesting research trying to reverse engineer the YouTube algorithm and uncover the factors impacting how, when, where, and why certain videos are displayed on YouTube. To find out more about Matt and his work, you can follow him on Twitter at Matt Gielen, that's Gielen, or check out littlemonstermediaco.com. Matt, thanks so much for taking the time out, and welcome to the Social Media and Politics Podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So before we dive into the YouTube algorithm and its implications for politics, let's talk a little bit about your reverse engineering project. And I definitely encourage our listeners to check it out. It's a super interesting read. You can find it on the blog TubeFilter. Just Google reverse engineering YouTube algorithm and it should come up. So Matt, can you tell us a little bit about the backstory on that project and what exactly you were trying to do?
Sure. So the backstory on that project came about when we'd been spending a lot of time building up our content library on YouTube, and we were releasing very similar content over the course of 9 months or so. And we were wondering why certain videos performed better than others when there was no real discernible difference in quality of the content or the cadence at which we were releasing content. So, one of our big series at the time was a series called 107 Facts, where we would do, 107 facts about Adventure Time or 107 facts about Pixar, because Channel Frederator was a cartoon-based channel. And some videos would do 7 million views and some videos would do 700,000 views. And, there's a huge difference, not just in viewership, but also in revenue. And when you're a company of any sort, but especially a media company, you want stability. right? And you want predictability in terms of the results of the media you create. And so we were looking to essentially find metrics that we could look at that would give us some measure of predictability in our programming choices. And one of the things we know about YouTube is that it's 95% driven, how your videos are going to do by the algorithm. And YouTube holds their cards very close to their chest in terms of what's going to be successful within the algorithm. And so what we were doing is we were looking into our data to try and make educated guesses and create testable hypotheses as to what the important metrics in the algorithm would be given the data that we have access to.
And one of the things that kind of stuck with me after reading the report was this concept of view velocity, which kind of highlights, I think, that the YouTube algorithm isn't as simple as just ranking videos by views. So can you fill our listeners in a little bit about what view velocity is?
Sure. So view velocity is the concept of how quickly a video picks up viewership. And then we also use the term a little bit more broadly to talk about the view velocity on a channel, especially as it pertains to negative view velocity. So kind of the reverse of how quickly your videos are gaining viewership, being how quickly your library of videos are losing their viewership.
This raises some interesting questions when it comes to political campaigning, I think, because wouldn't view velocity metrics seem to benefit those political candidates with an extremist or a fringe agenda, which tends to have a energized and activist voter base? So I'm thinking in the past U.S. election, for example, you have candidates like Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump who are advocating some pretty radical views that build a passionate following. And these supporters might be more apt to actively subscribe and watch their own candidates' content when it first comes out, giving a high velocity score and kind of snowballing their videos' content out onto YouTube. So do you think that's actually the case, or could it be something else?
I think that's part of it. One thing I will say is that we'll disagree on the fact that Bernie's ideas are radical.
Fair enough.
Seeing as though they're widely accepted by the majority of the world. But anyway,
right, just coming from a political science left-right perspective there.
So generally speaking, yes, if you have a highly engaged fan base that's rabid for new content from you, yeah, you're going to have an advantage. But I mean, I think you would have an advantage in the real world as well if your fan base is highly engaged and motivated. On YouTube, that does mean that potentially your videos would be pushed out further kind of across the site and featured more heavily. But I think that's true regardless of the algorithm. I think the algorithm is just kind of responding to real life factors, right? Like if you have a highly engaged fan base, be it, if you're The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones, and you put out content that they're super hungry for, then the viewership uptick is going to be heavier. And then YouTube responding to that by saying, hey, look, this video is very popular amongst these fans. We should share this video with other people that our algorithm determines to be similar to them because we think they might like it as well.
And what does that mean exactly when you have a high velocity score or a high view duration and the algorithm rewards you? What does that mean exactly? I mean, there's suggested videos, but yeah, what are the other sort of ways that YouTube pushes out highly ranked videos?
So for the first part of the question, in terms of view velocity, we kind of looked at several factors that would go into view velocity. The one that is most easily discernible is the rate of your subscribers who watch within the first 48 hours. We saw a strong correlation between high percentages of subscribers watching the first 48 hours and long-term viewership or successful viewership. So for us, a successful video would have been about 1 million views. And what we found was that if somewhere between 7 and 10% of our subscriber base watched in the first 48 hours, that tended to get a video to that 1 million view mark. And that million view mark at the time was equivalent to 100% of our subscribers, right? So it didn't mean 100% of our subscribers watched. It was just a kind of a benchmark metric. I mean, there are other sources of view velocity, right? Videos being shared on social networks, videos being embedded on websites. All of those things can factor into kind of that initial view velocity. And one of the reasons why we look at the first 48 hours is because during that time, YouTube is categorizing your video and essentially making judgments about your video. Because when you upload a video, the only information they have really is the information that the user puts in, which is historically completely unreliable, right? In wide generalizations, right? Over time, a channel becomes trusted, right? Like when you have uploaded a number of videos and clearly people are viewing them and they have good average view durations, and when someone clicks on your video, they don't immediately abandon it. YouTube begins trusting you as a video uploader, just in the same way that Google trusts certain websites to be authorities on various keywords and on information. That's view velocity. In terms of the second part of your question, which is how does YouTube push that out? So the biggest kind of thumb on the scale that YouTube has is essentially suggested or recommended videos that appear on the YouTube homepage or in the main kind of scroll or feed when you first land on YouTube in, let's say, the mobile app, because mobile is about 50% of viewership these days. And what they do is when a user lands on that homepage, essentially they look at three different kind of factors of you as a viewer, right? They look at your watch history, they look at your search history, and then they look at your demographic information. And again, I'm generalizing because there's a lot of factors within that, but essentially that's what they're looking at. And where they look at that is tokens on your browser or tokens within the YouTube app. So this is based on a paper that Google released back in September. It's not theory. And what they do is they say, okay, given these factors, what videos are you most likely going to be interested in? And from there, they send it to ranking filter, and that filter ranks those videos, which determines where in that scroll or where in that block of 10 or 12 videos on the homepage that are recommended at the top if you're logged in, where those videos are going to be. And so if you're a big Bernie supporter and you watch a lot of Bernie videos and you are putzing around the internet and you go to youtube.com, in that recommended or suggested section, YouTube is going to see your watch history and say, man, this person really likes watching Bernie videos. Other people like this viewer really like watching this particular Bernie video. And it's very new, right? Because YouTube also looks at newness as an important factor for the platform. Again, that was verified in the report from Google that they put out in September. Let's serve this video to them. And not just that, whatever video you click on in the recommended and suggested videos, all of that information is still traveling with you. And on a watch page in the right-hand column where they recommend and suggest videos, they're going to serve that video. And so if a video is super hot and it's taken off and you're just going through different videos on YouTube, YouTube is going to look at all of those factors and say, we should really serve this video to that person because of the factors within this video. People like this viewer, really like this video. This person has shown that they like to watch videos like this, and that video is generating a lot of quote-unquote watch time on the site. And by watch time, we mean essentially time on site.
Mm-hmm. Like as in a total session on YouTube at once.
Right. So like one of the biggest factors for ranking a video is that video's ability to keep people on the website. And so in terms of the metrics you look at like average view duration. There's no abandonment rate, but you can kind of look at the first 10 seconds of the video and see what the fall off is in terms of the number of people that are going to abandon that video in the first 10 seconds. Could be kind of a back of the napkin fall off rate. If that's not high, right, you want that to be low, like a golf score, then YouTube is going to say, well, this video keeps people on our site for a long time. People really like watching this entire video. Very few people abandon this video, so it was a smart choice to recommend or suggest this video to this user. And from there, they'll say, well, who are other videos like them, and insert it there.
Mm-hmm. And let's say you release a video and it doesn't get a high velocity score, or it doesn't get a lot of view duration. And so let's say it's the last video that someone watches and they log off of YouTube. That can actually negatively impact your reach, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So going to this idea of kind of fringe candidates and more kind of traditional mainstream politicians like Hillary Clinton or Jeb Bush, they might get a lot of views on their videos simply because they are seen as the mainstream candidate or more popular, but they might not have this kind of hardcore devoted following. So my thought would be that people might click on their content but not watch it very long, just if they're a generally interested in politics person, but not necessarily a supporter. So do you think that this negatively impacts the content that some of these more well-known politicians might put out?
I don't think they think about it that way. I think they probably don't look at YouTube as a platform as a central kind of distribution point for a consistent content strategy, right? They probably put their commercials up there. They're probably like, well, we need to put something out once a week, and if people see it, great. If not, really their big mouthpiece is the more kind of mainstream media and reach, because when they post to YouTube, for the most part, they're not getting the reach that they get if they send, a surrogate on Meet the Press or, right, MSNBC or what have you.
Right, because what I've been reading, looking into some background research for this episode, is that it seems that most candidates use YouTube, at least in this past election, as a way to gather data. So they want to find out which messages work for which audience by seeing how long they watch their videos, or if they can get past this sort of 5-second skip button. And this is a feature called TrueView, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk a little bit about TrueView and what kind of data you get from it?
Sure. There's a lot to unwrap in that question, but I'll answer your question first, okay, and then dive into a number of spiels. So TrueView is essentially, there's two forms of TrueView. There's TrueView in-stream, which is what you were talking about. And TrueView in-stream is a skippable pre-roll format. Basically, you can run any video as an ad, and after 5 seconds, the audience can click skip and go to the video that they want to go to. There's another form of TrueView that very few people use, I think, or is not as widely understood, which is what used to be called TrueView and Display is now called, I believe, a video discovery ad or something similar, which is basically a cost per click ad unit or CPC ad unit, where basically it's the thumbnail image and a title. And sometimes the body of the ad shows up as well, all text, and those run as ads on a video watch page, but not within the video, but in the right-hand column, where it kind of looks exactly like any other suggested video. Now, there's a little yellow thing that says ad next to it, but it doesn't really stand out. So it looks like it's just a suggested video. And then there's also the ads that run at top of search, which are basically one and the same. Now you can make a determination on the back end of AdWords that says, I don't want it to run in search, I do want it to run in search, and the same thing for on video pages, but essentially it's a static ad, and when someone clicks on it, they can either go to your watch page or channel page, and once they've clicked on it, they're experiencing YouTube just as if they had clicked onto your channel or had clicked onto one of your watch pages as a search result or as a suggested video. Mm-hmm. So going back to the TrueView in-stream and how politicians are using YouTube, I have not had the chance to read any studies about how they're particularly using YouTube, especially as it pertains to running videos as ad units. In fact, I'd love for you to share those with me after these calls, if you don't mind. But that said, in terms of the data that you can get back from running an ad as a skippable pre-roll, you can get the average view duration based on your YouTube analytics. You can get all sorts of demographic information. You can't really determine in YouTube based on demographic what the average view duration was in AdWords. I don't believe maybe they do break it down that granularly. However, regardless, I would say it's really muddy data, and any learnings you try to glean from that data, I would say would be poor. A more strategic use would be to run that ad across the given area that you want to run it, so that you can basically cookie all the people that saw that ad, and then you can remarket to those people based on very thin slices of demographic information.
And I think that's exactly what they're doing, is that they're sort of harvesting some of this demographic information from YouTube and then going on other platforms like Facebook and Twitter and really micro-targeting those demographics.
I'm not familiar enough to know whether you can take a YouTube or Google remarketing list and run that in Facebook and Twitter. My guess is that you can't. Google tends to be very, very, very stingy with the ability to port data like that. But I think maybe there's a bridge in the sense that they run that in-stream ad to try and get you to click onto their website, and then they use that website remarketing in Facebook and in Twitter.
To sign you up and get your zip
right.
code. And okay.
Well, that, and since they're on their website, you can put in your Facebook and Twitter pixels that will send that person's information to Facebook and Twitter, where you can then target them on Facebook and Twitter, right? So you might have your AdWords remarketing code in there too, but you also have the ability to add that Facebook code and that Twitter code to your own website, where you don't have the ability to do that on YouTube.
And keeping with this kind of bridge, or I don't know how much of a bridge it is, between YouTube and Facebook, they're pretty intense competitors. Most of the stuff I've been reading has been saying that really Google and Facebook are these kind of two tech giants that are trying to take up market share from each other. But I'm kind of curious as to the relationship between the two, because aren't YouTube videos embedded into Facebook? And do these count as metrics towards YouTube's algorithms, or is it something kind of different?
So embedded views definitely count towards YouTube's algorithm. In fact, it's probably one of the best types of views you can get in terms of just like algorithmic promotion. What we tend to see when a video gets embedded is that there's very little click-through, right? Because like if you're on a website and you click play on a YouTube video, chances are you're not interested in a long YouTube session. You're interested in how that video pertains to the website you're on, or the blog you're reading, or the article you're reading, right? So like you don't see a lot of click-through into YouTube, but it's a really, really strong signal to the algorithm that this video is relevant, and this video has the ability to start YouTube sessions. Because in kind of algorithmic world, what I've seen is that it's far more important to start a session, or the positive aspects of starting a session far outweigh the negative impacts of ending a session. Especially as it pertains to embedded videos. You know, the guys at Google are pretty smart, right? So like they kind of get how, you know, viewing patterns go, and they're not really going to punish someone for a quote unquote end session if someone's watching it embedding, right? They know that's how videos go when they get embedded.
Right.
In terms of getting, you know, embed views on Facebook, definitely a strong signal. The biggest issue is that Facebook basically started making YouTube links just website links, where you have to like click off of Facebook to go to YouTube to watch the video. And, you know, they've been doing that as a way to, you know, fight with Google on video views. However, there's also plenty of relatively unsavory gray hat things going on, where, you know, in Facebook mobile games, or just Facebook games, there are outfits out there that'll sell YouTube views through those games, right? And so the way it works is essentially like you're playing, you know, let's just say Farmville. I don't know if Farmville does this or not, but games similar to that. You're playing Farmville and you need more tokens to buy whatever thing it is, right? Well, you can earn tokens by watching a YouTube video, right? For 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes or whatever it is. And it's a way of kind of gaming the algorithm, because it's very difficult, in my understanding, for YouTube to make a determination as to whether that's like a real organic Facebook view or whether that's one that's been bought and paid for.
It's interesting because I do know there have been instances where politicians are, when they campaign, creating their own games. We had Chasen Campbell from Harris Media on the show a couple episodes back, and he was talking about during Senator Mitch McConnell's re-election race, he had a sort of Frogger game. I forget exactly what it was, where
of course he did.
You had to dodge Obamacare or something along those lines.
Oh my God!
And there's not it's not for the entertainment, right? There is some benefit for them at the end of the day, whether it's through an algorithm. It's not just engagement, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that being the case with anything, created like that. My guess is that the idea was probably for all the mouth-breathing Republicans who, don't recognize how helpful the ACA and Obamacare has been to them. It's a way for them to share it virally, right? Their, propaganda about how terrible it is a way for them to propagate that.
And this is another interesting point, which is when you have this very sort of partisan, sensational, biased content, it does keep people looking for more. I think Trump's the classic example. People like to watch him, or even if they're shocked by him, they still watch one video, maybe another video, and another one. And it's interesting to think that this might be giving that candidate more reach in terms of the YouTube sphere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, it's also something we see in the mainstream media as well, right? Sell this sensationalist content, get an audience. And in that sense, the online isn't so different from your sort of legacy media.
No, absolutely. And, it speaks to a broader point of the inundation of messaging where we care far less about the truth, and we care far less about the quality of the content than we do in reaffirming our own opinions or getting a quick shot off at someone. So like when you're inundated with so many messages in a given day, something that rises above kind of the low hum of, hard news that's sensationalist is going to catch your attention. And so content generally being created has to push the limits further and further and further in order to rise above the white noise, right? When you think about YouTube and white noise, you're talking about, hundreds of millions of minutes of content being uploaded all the time, on a daily basis. That's, there's lifetimes of content being uploaded per hour.
Yeah. And it's something that a number of other guests on the show have talked about, whether they're working with a campaign or whether they're an academic, the power of visual, the power of images, memes, videos. And this is something that your company works with, unlocking the power of video for brand management. But in the context of politics, what do you think that means? How are videos on YouTube different than classic sort of town hall formats, for example?
Well, I mean, I think it completely depends, right? Because you can watch a live stream debate. You could watch a live stream town hall on YouTube, and it's not that much different than watching it on your TV. In fact, you could probably watch that on your TV via YouTube platform. So like that kind of speaks to the central question as to, what is YouTube? YouTube right now is funding content. Does that make them a studio? Right? Does that make them a network? Because they also distribute it and they also do the monetization of it. But generally speaking, if we think more along the lines of like a Young Turks, Young Turks is kind of a bit of a hybrid YouTube news broadcast, right? They sit at desks, but they also address the viewer directly. Well, so does Rachel Maddow and, Bill O'Reilly. So where you start drawing, lines, they immediately kind of fall apart. One of the interesting things that we saw in this election was YouTube vloggers directly taking stands on politics, right? You look at Tyler Oakley, you look at Hannah Hart, Phil DeFranco even. addressing their viewers and stating what their opinions are in the matter and trying to exert their influence over their audience to get them to take action politically. And so, you can look at hundreds of studies that talk about video being, X number of times more powerful than a picture, X number of times more powerful than written words in terms of, people's recall and decision making. You can look at studies that talk about how, YouTube influencers are, 3 times more powerful in exerting influence than, a mainstream celebrity or a commercial and those sort of things. And it kind of speaks back to a relationship, right? And having a direct one-on-one relationship with an audience. And YouTube gives you the ability that other platforms and mediums don't necessarily have in terms of fostering that relationship. And one of the kind of advantages, other than there not being many gatekeepers, right? I can upload a video at any time of the day versus on TV. It's like you've got this slot, which means that you're only going to be able to reach an audience that is available to watch it at this time, right? Now, yes, they are now distributing that otherwhere, and you can foster audience in other places. So being a video on demand platform allows that kind of like anytime, anywhere ability to build an audience and a relationship. And then there's the means in which it's being consumed. So something like, I think on average, probably 93 to 95% from what I've seen of YouTube viewership happens via mobile, tablet, or desktop. Right? Pretty much all of those experiences are individual experiences. And pretty much all of those experiences are with people, no more than 2 feet away from their screens. That's a very intimate and engaging relationship, right? Now, probably around age, 6 to 11, kids start having the concept of this person is not speaking directly to me. I get that they're creating this video and distributing it. They start to have some formulation of that. But regardless, there's still going to be this one-on-one relationship that a person has with the person uploading the video, if we're assuming like a vlog format. And it's very intimate. Like when you watch Rachel Maddow on your TV, you're probably somewhere between 10 and 20 feet away from her, right? And I know it seems like that might be a small thing, but my guess is that that keeps you from having as intimate of a relationship with Rachel than it could with a potential vlogger. And on top of that, if you look at the language used, what you typically see in kind of mainstream news is more of a presentation versus what you see on kind of the endemic YouTube end is much more of a conversation. So on one hand, you have presentation, and on the other, you have conversation. I don't think that there's any way to, make an argument that conversation is going to be much more engaging than presentation. And so that allows for that relationship to really grow stronger and YouTubers have more influence. And so if politicians embrace kind of those two things, right, the benefits of the YouTube platform on the software side, and then on the audience side, how they're engaging with the content through smaller screens predominantly and in a very close-up, engaging, conversational way, you're going to see a lot of results, right? Like look at what Obama did with his addresses. It was always direct to camera, and they did very well on YouTube.
Yeah, I think it really hits the head on the nail of something else I've been reading, which was about this concept of authenticity, which also came up in a previous episode as to why NGOs that serve immigrants don't adopt social media. One of the reasons they cited because they lose authenticity. And there's something about YouTube that it is kind of, I think in its origins, this kind of user-generated upload, talk to an audience in kind of an informal manner that as you said, Obama in 2008, he really accomplished that, but it's kind of like secrets out the bag, and other politicians it's hard for them to come across as authentic without looking like they're strategically using the platform. So in terms of what a politician could do to accomplish that, do you have any thoughts in terms of what you know about the YouTube community? I mean, you've obviously been very engaged with it. It's your business. What would a politician do to be authentic, quote unquote, on YouTube?
I think first and foremost would be to not write out a audience focus group tested talking point script, right? Like the YouTube audience, and I would say people below the age of 34 have extremely high sensitivity bullshit detectors. Now, some of that seems to be slipping away if we look at some of the present content that's doing well on YouTube. Or maybe it's just, people who are so delusional that they actually believe what they say. But more off the cuff and more bullet pointed would be a big start. That would be the first suggestion. The second would be more kind of direct to camera and conversational style. Those two things are going to get you the most mileage, which basically boils down to, be a human being and act like you're talking to, your friends or family, because that's how most of these YouTubers have blown up and done well. They speak their mind and believe in what they say, and that allows them not just to have a sense of authenticity about them, but to actually be authentic.
And is this where live video can come in? I'd like to hear your thoughts just in general on live video and where that's going. That would seem to bring an air of authenticity when it's live, when people can react as it happens. But we've had a couple other people talking about live video as kind of where things are moving. Do you think that's the case?
Well, what I would say is a lot of politics shows are already live, and you get Kellyanne Conway on there talking about the Bowling Green massacre. So I don't think live as a platform necessarily contributes to authenticity, right? I think it has to do more with, believing what you say and your actions proving that out. And if you're going to be on a live stream and parrot the same talking points and dodge questions, you're not going to come off as authentic. To the broader question about where is everything going in terms of live streaming, it seems to be the case that pretty much any time Facebook says this is going to be a thing, everyone in the media goes, oh, this is going to be a thing. And Facebook tries to make that thing true by pushing it via their algorithm and inflating metrics, right? What did they come out 4 times now and said, oh, by the way, those metrics are wrong, just kidding. And the reason they do that is to get people invested into their platform so that they become dependent on their platform, so that they continue to push their platform before pulling the rug out from under them. Now, that said, there's plenty of other live streaming platforms that have done well for themselves, right? Twitch has done extremely well, and I think they're trying to diversify beyond gaming, which I applaud and think is great. YouTube is pushing live streaming more. They just opened their mobile live streaming for people with over 10,000 subscribers. And then, of course, Facebook Live, which there was a major media campaign around. Facebook Live was going to be everything for about 6 months. And then Facebook said, yeah, just kidding. We're not going to really do that so much anymore. But that said, generally speaking, live streaming is nothing new. It's been here for 20 years. I remember back in, must have been 2007, 2008, there were all these articles around someone who was live streaming their life, 24 hours a day, all day. And, well, I don't remember what that is, and I don't even think it exists anymore.
Not Big Brother, right?
Not Big Brother. I had a friend who was on Big Brother, and it was interesting to watch for that one season. I can see how it ropes you in, man. It's interesting stuff. But even live streaming, right? It's the same thing with a documentary, right? When you're live streaming, a camera is on you and it's being broadcast to the world. So just that knowledge changes how you act because it's live. And so there's an inherent bias and change is going to happen. Still not authentic just because it's live. It's just the mere knowledge that it's there, right? And it's similar to a documentary, because in a documentary you make choices, right? Like you choose what to show and when to edit and when to cut. So that's still there. But that said, I think live streaming as a medium in digital definitely has a long way to go, and I think there could potentially be a ton of upside. I think we're starting to see more and more actual programming being done in live stream, where real shows are being made, and it's appointment viewing. I think there's a lot of opportunity there if people thought about it a little more, other than, well, what are we going to live stream? Oh, we're going to live stream a bunch of people just sitting around talking because it doesn't cost much, right? Or what are we going to live stream? Oh, we're going to live stream me playing some video games and answering questions. It's like, okay, that's great and all. And I'm not trying to knock anyone that does that. I'm just thinking that there's a lot of opportunity beyond that to leverage live streaming as a platform and a medium to gain audience and viewership. And I think we just haven't really tapped into that in a massive way just yet. And part of the problem is scale. Like, the biggest videos in the world have billions of views. The biggest live stream in the world was not Donald Trump's inauguration. You know, I don't know, what's the count now? 100 million people viewed it over your live stream, if you believe Spencer or whatever his name is. The largest live stream in the world was the Red Bull drum from the stratosphere. And that was like the high water mark was 20 million or so concurrent streams. So it's definitely not easy. I don't know if the audience is really there yet, but I certainly see live streaming as being an untapped area where I think a lot of progress could be made.
I just want to ask one more question that I wasn't able to get to, which is about the monetization of YouTube. You talked a little bit about it before, but I'm curious if a YouTube video or if a YouTube channel can make money. Is it possible that a political campaign could put out a video, thinking maybe an attack ad, and could it actually generate enough revenue to cover the cost of production, or could the campaign actually use YouTube to make money?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I don't know what the political laws are in different countries or in the US that would regulate that in some way, but yeah, absolutely, right? Like, typically you're looking at about $1 to $2 per 1,000 raw views, very generally speaking, in the US. So yeah, it depends on the cost, right? Like, if a video costs you, a couple $100 to make, because it's just a series of like edited images and some voiceover, then yeah, it only takes a couple 100,000 views to make that money back. So it's definitely a possibility.
And do you have to sign up to be monetized? Or I saw a video of Senator Tim Kaine on Facebook recently, where he was basically expressing why he voted no for Betsy DeVos and her confirmation. Like, is he getting money off that we don't know about? Or can this somehow be reinvested into, I don't know, public infrastructure or schools? Like, it seems like the White House could do that, right? They could have a sort of fireside chat and then invest that money somewhere positive.
You seem to think that the U.S. is interested in doing positive things for its citizens. But so Facebook, for the most part, doesn't offer monetization for most publishers. There's some form of revenue sharing with, and they're experimenting with 20-second mark mid-rolls of some sort. But for the most part, just the average video publisher on Facebook is not generating revenue from advertisements being served against that video, leaving off product endorsements. On YouTube, yes. Anyone, as far as I know, and again, I don't know what the political laws are around this, but any YouTube channel, generally speaking, can sign up for AdSense and begin monetizing their videos. You can join an MCN and have them monetize your videos. You could do product placements within your videos and do it that way. So yes, it's completely possible that a government agency could sign up for AdSense and have the money coming in from AdSense be used for noble purposes.
All right. Little Monster Media Co. public-private partnership in the future? Think about it.
We'll see. I mean, I guess it would probably depend on the clientele, and if certain elements of our political systems dug up this podcast, I would imagine that would probably limit us from certain clients.
Matt, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your insights with us.
Thanks for having me on.
I've just been speaking with Matt Gielen, founder of Little Monster Media Co. and YouTube Wiz. You can follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Gielen, or check out his company's website, littlemonstermediaco.com. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Social Media and Politics Podcast. We'd love to know what you thought of this show. Drop us a line on our Twitter account at SMNP Podcast, or write us on Facebook, facebook.com/Social Media and Politics Podcast. As always, thanks to Copenhagen University, Peter Orbeck, and Earfunk for these funky jams. Signing off from a wintry Copenhagen, I'm Michael Pacetta. See you next time.